Here's something no one's telling you about. You're definitely familiar with the state of California. You've seen the glitz and glam of Hollywood, the historic architecture at the Golden Gate Bridge or on Alcatraz Island, the untold riches built throughout Silicon Valley, creating some of the world's leading technologies. But I'm sure you've never heard of the horrors and atrocities committed by some of California's founding fathers, orchestrating a statewide genocide against the original inhabitants of these lands from 1846 to 1873. Hi, my name is Josiah, and I am obsessed with the way that we talk about history and the great outdoors. For the past 5 years, I've been visiting all of California's 280 state parks. For the last 2 years, I've been learning about the historical atrocities committed against various indigenous nations throughout the state of what we now call California, working to gain a better understanding of the history of a state whose past and present are filled with violence in so many different forms. The original goal of my organization, Diversify Our Parks, was to advocate for the increased inclusion of Native voices throughout the California state park system. But thanks to several different Native perspectives that have been shared with me, I've come to realize that the inclusion of information about different Native groups in the California state park system is not enough. Increasing the amount of informational plaques or signage in state park visitor centers, while nice, do not do nearly enough to address the historical terror and present pain that so many Native people feel still today. While there are entire libraries of information that I do not know, what I do know is that to address historical wrongs, we must do more than just seek increased representation. That is why I'm changing the name of my organization from Diversify Our Parks to Return the Parks. This organization will be focused on advocating for the return of California state park land to the various Native nations that are found on or around state park boundaries. The rationale, you might ask? Stick with me here. From the beginning of the state of California, government officials have been trying to figure out what to do about the Indian problem. To solve this problem, some of California's original lawmakers advocated for the total erasure of Native populations. California's first governor, Peter Burnett, in 1850 advocated for a war of extermination to be waged. Others, like John Sutter, encouraged the enslavement of Native peoples to accomplish economic goals. In 1850, 3 federal agents were sent to California to negotiate treaties with Native nations, much like what had been done throughout the rest of America to dispossess Native peoples of their land. There were 18 indigenous treaties signed from 1851 to 1852, setting aside 8.5 million acres for indigenous people throughout the newly formed state. In 1852, these treaties were sent to the United States Senate to be ratified. These senators, instead of honoring the treaties, hid them away in secret for over 50 years. What happened next was one of the most brutally horrific times for the indigenous people of what we now call California. The new California government passed the Act for the Government and Protection of Indians, essentially allowing the wanton killing and enslavement of Native peoples throughout California. Killing squads roamed throughout California, bought and paid for by the U.S. government. Native children were legally captured by slavers in the state who killed their parents to be able to gain control of these Native kids, offering them up at slave markets like the Downey Block in Los Angeles. Forced relocation marches, execution, and sexual violence were all too commonplace. Violence and brutalization wrapped in the facade of progress. Yes, the killing squads did go away. You can't hire your neighbor to go hunt people anymore. But the genocide is ongoing. Corporations continue to pursue exploratory mining contracts on sacred Native land, like on the traditional lands of the Quechan people in southeastern California. Erasure continues to happen as federal standards for recognition of different indigenous groups continue to arbitrarily shift, refusing to help entire people groups like the Nevada City Nisenan because of an inability to meet different rules for recognition, despite some of these rules being completely impossible to meet because of the historical experience of erasure so common to so many Native Californians. Native burial grounds are at threat of total destruction to make way for real estate developers, like what is currently happening to the Muwekma or Lashawn Ohlone people found in the Bay Area. Water is being siphoned from Native groups like the Mono or the Paiute, who live near the Sierras, destroying the natural environment to bring water to Los Angeles. Logging companies in Northern California have nearly destroyed all of the old-growth redwood that have inhabited these forests for thousands of years. Coastal pollution of marine resources have led to the inability to confidently consume traditional foods on the homelands of the Tolowa Dene people in Northern California. The state of California has the 5th highest rate of murdered and missing indigenous persons throughout the entire United States. So what's the answer to all of this bad? Well, land back, of course. There are approximately 1.4 million acres of state park land in California, roughly 16% of the total land promised to indigenous peoples in 1852. What better way to address these historical wrongs than returning California state park land to its rightful owners? Thanks for joining me today on a quick journey through indigenous California. And remember, the only way forward is land back. I'll see you next time.